Chapter 1. Transfer. In mid-September, the sky was a clear, bright blue with not a single cloud in sight. The sun hung high in the sky like a blazing furnace, scorching the earth below. The breeze that blew carried a stifling heat. At 10 a.m., Ning Changyu walked down the school path with his hands in his pockets, wearing a backpack and a baseball cap with the brim pulled low, revealing only the tip of his chin. He reluctantly followed the new school's homeroom teacher. The cicadas on the branches along the road chirped relentlessly, as if complaining about the oppressive heat. Ning Changyu had sensitive skin that easily got sunburned, a condition medically known as sun allergy. So, when he came to school today, he was wearing a black long-sleeved shirt, even though he was already drenched in sweat, and his back was likely soaked through. In his haste to come to school, he had forgotten to bring tissues and had to use his precious sleeve to wipe the sweat from his forehead. In the high school year 2, Class 3 Science section, the class representative, Li Xiaohan, returned from the office, looking like she had some exciting news to share. She shouted, "Hey everyone! I've got great news. We're getting a new transfer student today, and I've heard he's super handsome. The homeroom teacher is bringing him over right now." Although Class 3 was a science class, the male-to-female ratio was not skewed, and the class had an almost even split between boys and girls. Hearing that a new student was joining, everyone was abuzz with excitement, especially the girls who couldn't resist speculating about the new student. The classroom soon became noisy with chatter. A boy who had been dozing off at the back of the class was woken up by the commotion. Annoyed, he frowned, didn't even lift his head, and slammed his hand on the desk. The loud bang silenced the room instantly. This boy was none other than Yin Izha, known as both the school's tyrant and heartthrob. The class quieted down, everyone exchanging glances, suddenly remembering that the school tyrant was still in the room sleeping. Although Yin Izha was an outrageously handsome boy, his notorious bad temper and the fearsome reputation of being a school tyrant kept everyone at a respectful distance. Hence, the students referred to him more as the tyrant than the heartthrob. Seeing that the tyrant had gone back to sleep, the students resumed their quiet, whispered discussions. Soon, the homeroom teacher, Kong Hai, walked into the classroom with a student in tow. It was the transfer student. His skin was naturally pale, but in his black clothes, it looked even whiter, especially compared to the other boys in the class. The students stared at the tall, new student, and even though they hadn't seen his full face yet, it didn't stop them from letting out little squeals of excitement, with Li Xiaohan's voice being the most prominent. Ning Changyu didn't react much to the attention. He kept his hands in his pockets and stood there quietly, as if he was used to such a scene. Kong Hai, who was in his 30s and small in stature, was affectionately called Old Ban, or Brother Hai by the students. He motioned for everyone to be quiet. "Classmates, this is the new student who will be with us for the next 2 years. Let's give him a warm welcome with some applause." After a round of not so coordinated applause, Kong Hai turned to Ning Changyu and said, "Come on, handsome. Introduce yourself to everyone." Ning Changyu gave a small "m" and then coolly walked to the podium. He wrote his name on the blackboard in bold, flowing strokes. The class monitor, Liang Shui, sitting in the front row, squinted as she adjusted her glasses and whispered to her deskmate, "So the new transfer student is named Ning Changyu. Even though we haven't seen his whole face, just that perfect jawline is enough to make my heart skip a beat." Ning Changyu, with his sharp hearing and close proximity, naturally heard her. The corner of his mouth curved into a slight smile as he introduced himself in a somewhat proud tone. "Hello, everyone. I'm Ning Changyu from Lan City. My name comes from the line in the Book of Songs, shallow joy, deep love, everlasting happiness." Seeing that Ning Changyu's self-introduction was brief, Kong Hai assumed the boy might be shy and didn't press him further. Looking around the classroom, he noticed 2 vacant seats and said, "There are 2 empty seats left, Ning Changyu. You can choose one. If you have any questions, feel free to ask the class monitor or your classmates." After giving his instructions and seeing that Ning Changyu had no questions, Kong Hai left for the office. Under the intense gazes of the other students, Ning Changyu walked toward the vacant seats. He noticed that one of the desks in the last row had a boy sleeping on it, and the adjacent seat was piled high with books. the desk surface messy and cluttered. Deciding against sitting there, he chose the seat in the second-to-last row. His desk mate was an adorable chubby boy who was thrilled that the transfer student had chosen to sit next to him. He greeted Ning Changyu excitedly. "Hi, Changyu. I'm Lien Juanhao, but you can call me Haozi. Everyone else does." He then scratched his head and gave a bashful smile. Ning Changyu found Lien Juanhao's first impression quite pleasant, thinking he was a cute little chubby boy. So he replied, "Hello." Ning Changyu reached out to pull out his chair to sit down, but the chair was stuck under the desk and made a loud screeching sound when he yanked it. The loud noise drew everyone's attention. The boy sleeping in the back, Nian Ija, was once again disturbed by the noise, and with an annoyed expression, he stretched out his long leg and kicked the chair in front of him. Fortunately, Ning Changyu reacted quickly, or else his fingers might have been caught between the desk and chair. Lien Juanhao was startled by the sudden kick, his mouth forming an O shape. He then asked Ning Changyu, "Are you okay, Changyu?" Ning Changyu shook his head and turned to glare at the culprit. "Damn. You?" He realized the culprit hadn't even lifted his head. The words he wanted to say got stuck in his throat. With all the other students watching, Ning Changyu felt his dignity was being challenged on his first day, making him feel humiliated. The small flames of anger inside him flared up, and he lightly tapped on the boy's desk, wanting an explanation and an apology. Only then did Nian Ija lazily lift his head, removing the earphones from his ears. He looked up with a frown, his gaze drifting carelessly to Ning Changyu, his voice cold. "What do you want?" Ning Changyu met his deep, sharp blue eyes. The slightly red corners of his eyes had a tear mole underneath, giving his already handsome face a touch of allure. Ning Changyu's mind went blank except for the words "beautiful demon," though he would never admit that his adversary was better looking than him. He said angrily, "You kicked my chair just now. If I hadn't reacted quickly, my fingers could have been caught. How can you be so careless? Not only do you not apologize, but you act like it's no big deal. What kind of attitude is that?" Nian Ija looked him up and down, listening to him finish speaking, then replied with a mischievous grin, "Oh, my attitude has nothing to do with you. I'll kick the chair if I want. What's your problem? Is there a sign with your name on the chair? Besides, I didn't even kick you, did I?" Ning Changyu was infuriated by his unreasonable response, but managed to suppress his temper, taking a deep breath. "Humph. I won't stoop to your level, you uncivilized brute." Nian Ija slightly smiled, tapping his fingers lightly on the desk, as if he was thinking about something. Then, as if remembering something, he glanced at the blackboard and said with a smirk, "Your name's Ning Changyu, right? You've caught my attention." Ning Changyu. What kind of tone is that? Do you think you're some CEO? Who wants to catch your attention? You're so full of yourself. Ning Changyu was so annoyed by his arrogant attitude that he almost rolled his eyes. He clenched his fists, trying to keep his temper in check, then turned around and sat down. Once seated, he let out a sigh of relief but quickly felt a pang of regret. He should have never agreed to his father's suggestion to come to the north to experience the life of an ordinary person. Now he had neither money nor power. Thinking about how he would have to control his temper in this new school and avoid causing trouble since there would be no one to back him up, he decided he didn't want to bother his aunt's family with his problems. They shouldn't have to come to school every time to deal with his issues. Nian Asia noticed how the new student had been fuming, but then seemed to give in. He found it amusing, like a small, frustrated animal, and watched Ning Changyu's retreating back with a smirk before lying down to continue his nap. The other students, not witnessing the expected confrontation, also breathed a sigh of relief. They didn't want the new student to clash with the school tyrant. Who wouldn't like a handsome boy? They were concerned the new student might be bullied by the tyrant. The classroom returned to its quiet state. Haozi, Ning Changyu's deskmate, glanced back cautiously, seeing that Nian Ija had gone back to sleep. He then whispered to Ning Changyu, "Changyu, the guy sitting behind you is Nian Ija. He's the school tyrant and heartthrob. You'd better be careful and not provoke him. He's got a nasty temper." Ning Changyu mentally gave him the finger. He had no respect for the titles of school tyrant or heartthrob. After all, he had a bad temper too. His philosophy was simple. If people don't mess with me, I won't mess with them. But if they do, I'll definitely mess with them. The feud between him and Yin Ija was set in stone. Back at his old school, the nickname Little Lord Ning wasn't just for show. Wherever he went, there was always a group of people following him, treating him as their leader. Who would dare to mess with him? For him, not causing trouble was already a blessing. Now that he was at a new school, he wasn't looking for trouble, but he wasn't afraid of it either. In response to his deskmate's well-meaning warning, Ning Changyu's lips curved into what might have been his first smile at the new school, and he nodded in acknowledgement. He could feel the curious gazes from his classmates, but he didn't care much. He was used to people admiring his looks. He pulled out his books from his bag, content to read from his old school's textbook since the content was mostly the same. Chapter 2. Provocation. His deskmate Housie told him that the next class was English. Soon, a somewhat stout woman with large black-framed glasses walked in with a textbook. The girl sitting in front of Ning Changyu, the English class representative Su Peilon, called out, "Stand up." The student stood up and greeted, "Good morning, Miss Yang." The English teacher, Yang Jinsi, responded, "Good morning, students. Sit down, please. Please open Unit 2 of your textbook. Now, let's have a student read yesterday's lesson and review some grammar points." The English teacher scanned the classroom and noticed the boy in the last row was still sleeping. She couldn't stand it when students slept in her class. She walked over to his desk, lightly tapped it, and sternly said, "Nian Ija, class has started. Wake up and get up." Ning Changyu couldn't help but feel a bit gleeful as he perked up his ears to hear how the English teacher would scold him. Nian Ija lazily lifted his head and leaned back in his chair. "Stand up and read yesterday's lesson to the class." Nian Ija stood up, pulled out his English textbook from the mess on his desk, flipped it open, and said, "I can't. I wasn't here for English yesterday." "If you can't, how dare you sleep in my class? And skipping my class? Are you trying to defy me? If you put even 50% of the effort you do in math and science into English, you wouldn't be scoring in the 20s or 30s. Nian Ija replied in a cheeky tone, "I was born smart. I can grasp math and science just by looking at them. No need to study. As for English, we're not meant for each other. Besides, I'm Chinese, with a Chinese soul. You expect me to learn English? That's not happening." Yang Jinsi was so frustrated by his obstinate attitude that she could barely hold back her anger. If it weren't for the fact that his terrible English still somehow got him into the top 10 of his grade, she would have lost it by now. Seeing that he was as stubborn as ever, Yang Jinsi knew that forcing him wouldn't work. "You think you're so clever, huh? Write yesterday's lesson 10 times, and if you don't understand, ask the class representative. Turn it in after class." Yang Jinsi then turned to Lien Juanhao. "Lien Juanhao, you read the lesson." Lien Juanhao stood up nervously. "Me? Miss Yang, are you sure you want me to read? I'm not very good at it." "Yes, go ahead." Lien Juanhao held his book and began to stammer through the reading. "On the weekend, I climbed the mound, Tain alone, climbed to a steep peak." The English teacher listened to his hesitant, heavily accented English and decided to let him off the hook. "All right, you can sit down. Make sure you practice reading more on your own." She then noticed Ning Changyu and said, "Lien Juanhao's deskmate, you're the new student, right? Come on, give it a try." Lien Juanhao eagerly introduced, "Miss Yang. His name is Ning Changyu." "All right, Ning Changyu, please read the lesson." Since Ning Changyu didn't have his own textbook yet, Lien Juanhao kindly handed him his book. Under the expectant gazes of the class, Ning Changyu took the book from Lien Juanhao, stood up, and began to read. Nian Ija smirked, eyeing Ning Changyu's back with a mocking expression, as if he was waiting to see him mess up. But Ning Changyu read the entire lesson fluently in a clear, American accent. The classroom erupted in applause, with students looking at him in awe. Yang Jinsi, impressed by his flawless American accent, praised him. "Changyu, your English is excellent. Could you translate the passage for the class?" Ning Changyu's best subject was English, and he almost always scored full marks. Without hesitation, he translated, "On the weekend, I went hiking alone. As I climbed to the peak, I saw an eagle hunting its prey. I couldn't help but marvel at the cruelty of nature. Though I understand it's a natural survival law, the survival of the fittest, I still felt the fragility and helplessness of life. The students listened to his unique voice, pure and magnetic, especially when reading English. It was a pleasure to listen to, even better than a professional voice actor does. After he finished translating, Yang Jinsi showered him with praise. Excellent work. Sit down. She then addressed the class. Everyone, try to learn from Changyu. Look at how well he's doing. Being praised by the English teacher in front of the whole class lifted Ning Changyu's spirits, and he couldn't help but smile as he sat down. Lien Juanhao looked at him with admiration. You're amazing, deskmate. For once, Ning Changyu was modest. It's nothing special. The rest of the class agreed with the teacher's praise, except for Nien Ija, who snorted disdainfully. Tian. Yang Jinsi, protective of her favorite students, immediately shot back. What's that thing about? Nien Ija? I'm talking about you. You should learn from him. You're sitting right behind him, so it's easy to exchange tips. Nien Ija lazily chuckled. I wasn't ching at anyone in particular. If someone feels targeted, that's not my problem. Ning Changyu heard Nien Ija's mocking tone, rolled his eyes inwardly and thought, as if I'd ever teach you, you pig. They had already become sworn enemies. Thus, amid the commotion, the English class finally came to an end. As soon as the bell rang, the students bolted out of the classroom like they were running a 100-meter dash, leaving the room almost empty in an instant, with only a few stragglers remaining. Ning Changyu was stunned by their haste and asked his deskmate, are they rushing to eat or to reincarnate? They're running way too fast. At our school, if you're slow, you'll be left with just the broth, Lien Juanhao explained. Ning Changyu massaged his forehead. Is it really that bad? At his previous elite school, there was always plenty of food in the cafeteria, no matter what time you went, with a wide variety of options. Oh, by the way, you need a campus card to eat in the cafeteria. You probably don't have one yet, right? Come on, let me treat you to lunch. Ning Changyu declined his offer, not wanting to owe anyone a favor. Thanks, but you go ahead. I have something else to do. Lien Juanhao didn't push him and said, all right, I'll go first then. Ning Changyu nodded, sure. He glanced around the classroom, noticing that everyone had left except for him and the still sleeping Nien Asia. Ning Changyu took out his phone and checked his messages. Besides texts from his best friend, he also saw messages from his cousin, Chu Yixin, and his cousin sister, Chu Yiqingda. Yiqing, little fishy, what class are you in? How's your new class? Are you getting used to it? Ning Changyu replied to his cousin sister. Not your spear. Butcher knife emoji. Don't call me little fishy at school. Call me big brother. Not your spear. I'm in class 3. Ishin, little fishy, what class are you in? I'll come over at noon and take you to lunch. Not your spear. Not your spear. Class 3. Ning Changyu had grown numb to the nickname Little Fishy that these two siblings kept calling him. He figured he couldn't correct them, so he just gave up. Fishy it is, whatever. After a while, the back door of the classroom creaked open and two boys walked in. They were Nien Ija's good buddies, Zhu Hao and Cheng Zishu. They noticed Ning Changyu sitting at the desk in front of Nien Ija and saw that Nien Ija was still asleep. Zhu Hao approached Ning Changyu and said, Hey, are you the new student? Ning Changyu glanced at him, nodded, then ignored them, continuing to look at his phone. Zhu Hao rubbed his chin and muttered to himself, why do all the good-looking guys love to act like hotshots? Zhu Hao was a troublemaker who hung out with the school tyrant, so naturally, he wasn't someone who followed the rules. Seeing that Ning Changyu was ignoring him, his mischievous hands couldn't resist, and he snatched Ning Changyu's baseball cap off his head. Ning Changyu turned around and gave him a death glare, saying coldly, do you want to keep your hands? If not, please donate them to someone who needs them. Cheng Zishu remained silent, playing the role of the invisible man, quietly watching the drama unfold. Zhu Hao was momentarily intimidated by Ning Changyu's sharp gaze, especially since Ning Changyu's face could rival Nien Ija's in terms of looks. But since Ning Changyu looked so pale and skinny like a bamboo stick, Zhu Hao figured he could easily take him in a fight. He quickly adjusted his attitude and laughed. I'd donate them if I could, but I'm afraid no one would dare to accept them. Ning Changyu could tell that these three were a group. Birds of a feather flock together, after all. They were all the same type, thick-skinned and unafraid of trouble, always messing around. He spoke in a threatening tone. I'll say it one more time. Give me back my hat, or don't blame me if I get physical. By this time, Nyenija had had enough sleep and woke up when his two friends came in. Although he hadn't gotten up yet, he hesitated for a moment before continuing to lie there, listening to the exchange between the transfer student and Zhuhao. Zhuhao wasn't taking Ning Changyu's words seriously, laughing as he said, "Kid, you've got a lot of nerve." "Oh no, I'm so scared." "Haha, you don't even know who the boss is at Lehigh, do you?" Ning Changyu figured this guy needed a lesson in humility and was more than willing to give it to him, to show him that there's always someone stronger. Ning Changyu pushed back his chair and stood up, though he accidentally stepped on someone's foot, presumably Nianija's, leaving a mark on his black sneakers. But he didn't have time to think about that. After all, Nianija had stretched his legs out too far. Ning Changyu walked around him and approached Zhu Haoda. Ning Changyu was shorter than Zhu Hao, but he wasn't lacking in confidence. "I see you really don't want to keep your hands." Cheng Zishu wasn't worried about them fighting, thinking Zhu Hao was bigger and stronger than Ning Changyu da. Nian Ija, no longer lying down, casually glanced at the footprint on his shoe, then looked up at the two boys who were about to start something. Ning Changyu kneed Zhu Hao in the stomach, grabbed his arm, and twisted it, causing the hat to fall to the ground. Zhu Hao fought back, aiming a punch at Ning Changyu's face. But Ning Changyu wasn't about to let that happen. He kicked Zhu Hao's knee, nearly making him kneel. The two of them quickly got into a scuffle. Seeing things going south with Zhu Hao at a disadvantage, Cheng Zishu moved to step in, but Ning Changyu shot him a cold glare, his voice icy. "Try touching me, and I'll make sure you both regret it." Ning Changyu had been practicing Taekwondo since he was 12, with 5 years of training that brought him close to a black belt. He also knew human anatomy well, understanding which parts were more vulnerable and where to strike for maximum pain. He specifically targeted the most painful spots. Cheng Zishu froze at his words and looked to Nian Ija. "Ja, what should we do?" Nian Ija didn't say anything, just quietly watched the scene unfold. Ning Changyu gave Zhu Hao another kick to the rear, then picked up his hat, dusted it off, and straightened his clothes before saying to Zhu Hao, "Learned your lesson yet? This is what happens when you mess with me. I'll let you off the hook this time." Zhu Hao felt like he had swallowed a bitter pill, unable to complain since he was the one who started it. With a frustrated look, he pointed at Ning Changyu. "You damn." Ning Changyu interrupted him with a cold glare. "You what? Point at me again, and I'll break your fingers." He then turned to meet Nian Ija's gaze and said coldly, "And you? What are you looking at? What, you want to fight me too? Come on, all of you at once. I'm ready." It was only now that Nian Ija got a good look at his face. His hair was a chestnut color at the tips, his skin fair, and he had a pair of beautiful, almond-shaped eyes. Right now, his eyes were wide with anger, his pupils sharp and bright. His features were delicate, with a kind of sharp beauty that gave him a clean, pure aura. How could someone so wild in a fight be so attractive, like a loose cannon? But instead of getting angry, Nian Ija chuckled. It wasn't that he was afraid of losing the fight, but rather that he found this guy interesting. So he lazily said, "Not today. Today's not a good day for fighting." Seeing him smile, Ning Changyu thought he was planning something sinister. "Whether you fight or not, it doesn't matter. You won't win anyway, even if all of you team up." Cheng Zishu helped Zhu Hao up. "Are you okay?" "Damn, my knee hurts." "Ow, damn, this guy hits hard." Hearing him curse, Ning Changyu shot him another death glare. Zhu Hao quickly shut his mouth. Just then, Chu Ishan entered Ning Changyu's classroom through the back door. He saw 4 people inside, the atmosphere tense, but he didn't think much of it and cheerfully said, "Little fishy, big brother's here to take you to lunch." Ning Changyu. It was not his day. On the very first day, his enemy had found out his nickname. He could already imagine the future teasing. But he obediently responded, "Okay," and put his hat back on before leaving with Chu Ishan.